Hello. Hello. Anyone there? Oh, Rabbi Green, are you not? Oh, you're not conducting the yeshir.
Okay, Zev,
Oh, here you are. Good morning.
we're just getting underway, all right? We didn't miss anything
I'm still out of commission.
except the kibbutz. Good morning, David.
Oh, who's the Magishir today?
Here.
Oh,
What about that? Don't do all. Someone open the box.
You know what Zichru is? They have to learn the thousand block when they touch it. By the way, we just did we just completed the first 1,000 block. Yeah, want to see my son answer the question? Huh? My son's there answering the questions. Okay, great. And he videoed it? No, it was on Twitter. Uh-huh. When they pull back, they'll show you the kid. They have the normal looking one that's answering the question.
Normal looking one. But he doesn't have a.
He's not wearing a black hat, he's with a bow tie.
Eventually, it's easy.
Okay, get there, come on.
Very shortly, they can't use it. Yeah.
Come on.
Pinky,
Yeah.
is this your son or your daughter's child?
No, this is my son. There he is. He's the one answering the question.
How was the bar mitzvah?
Bar mitzvah is wonderful. Yeah. Well, they ask you what daf it is on, hey, I'm with that on the bottom, on the top, all kinds of silly questions.
Good. Okay, learning sponsors, gentlemen. Good morning, everybody. I see we're beginning to reach a point that this room may not be sufficient.
Just bring more chairs.
Well, we'll see. If the 8:30 minion is meeting in the auditorium, then maybe we question. Okay. Learning sponsors. A year of learning, Friends of Marcy Kurtz in memory of her great niece Leah Bracha. Isaac and Evelyn Blachor in memory of his sister Chaya Rachel Bas Isser. Friends of Leonie Meisem and Leah Sabra Bas Chanoch Zum. 2 months of learning by the Friends of Milton Meller in honor of his second bar mitzvah, or his 83rd birthday. Month of learning by Ron and Susan Podolsky in memory of his mother, Fredel Bas Shraga Feivel. Phyllis and Chaim Reese in memory of her father, Pinchas ben Avraham. Rabbi Dr. Yankee and Malki Honig in memory of his sister Chava Bas Harav Simcha ben Yamin. His brother Tzvi Aaron Zeb ben Harav Simcha ben Yamin, his father Harav Simcha ben Yamin ben Harav Yosef Yitzchak, her mother Sosa Bat Koina. B. Pizer in memory of her sister Rivka Bas Avram Michael Halevi. A week of learning by Michael and Judith Poretsky in memory of his brother Avram ben Gershon. Today being the 1st of January, we do not have any individual days of learning today. Okay, main Shem is having Aliyah, crank Rafia, Velti Shiv Shemel, Tzliya, Kol B'nai Israel, a good Gabench.
Amen.
Okay. I am going to take a couple of minutes with your permission, since even though today is really a rather short daf, to appreciate it, I think I need to review just a tiny bit from yesterday. Okay? And I want to do so with first referring to the psukim, of course. Okay. I'm not going to read the entire section. Okay, that you can do on your own in Bamidbar Lamed, chapter 30 of Bamidbar. What I want to point out is the fact that basically at the beginning of Parshas Matos. Okay. So, for one verse, right, tells us as follows. This is Bamidbar Lamed Pasuk Dalet. Okay. V'isha ki tidor neder Lashem v'asra isar b'veit aviha b'neureha. Okay. So the woman makes a vow while she's living in her father's household. It's a girl. Okay. We're assuming. All right. Then it goes on. V'shama aviha et nidra v'esara asher asra al nafsha v'hecharishla aviha b'kamu kol nidareha kol isar asher asra al nafsha yakum. Okay, and then it goes on another verse or two. Okay, but the point that I want to get to is the verse, next verse, verse Vav. V'im heini aviha ota b'yom sham'o kol nidareha v'esareha asher asra al nafsha. Lo yakum b'Hashem yislach la ki ani aviha. So when the young lady is a minor, I'm going to phrase it this way, okay? That, in other words, she is certainly under 12. Actually, by 11, 11 years old, if she's knowledgeable of who she's making vows to, she's capable of making vows. But when she's under 12, she is a yalda. She is clearly under the domain or the supervision of her father. And were she to make a vow inappropriately, and her father hears of it on that day, says the pasuk, he may put aside. Okay, he can nullify that vow. Right? That's what the pasuk says. So that was pasuk number Vav, right? V'im heini avihat. Pasuk Zayin goes on. V'im hayu tiyeh le'ish unidareha leha o miftas fateha asher asra al nafsha v'shama isha b'yom. This is 7 and 8. V'sham o hecharish la v'kamu nidareha v'asra asher asra al nafsha yakumu. So now we have another situation where the pasuk tells us clearly when this particular female is married, she is in the domain of her husband. And if her husband hears inappropriately a vow, he has the responsibility, capability of nullifying her vow. Okay? All right. So we've got example number one, okay, when she's clearly a under 12, let's say. All right, so we call that all right, we could call it a katana, yalda, whatever. Then we have one that's married. Okay, now that could very well be a bogeret. Okay, she's already 12 and a half. Okay, what about the one that's in between? Okay.
Well, she's a Naira and she's married. Her husband was
Okay,
less.
so now let's get to the one in between, exactly. If she's a Na'ara, between 12 and 12 and a half, and she is, I'm going to say, Nisu'ah, clearly married, then she is still, as a married woman, under the aegis of her husband, right? He can nullify. But what happens if she's a na'ara and she's not nisu'ah? She's only arusa or mikudeshet. Okay, remember we've said the common practice back then was, okay, it's as if she's married, but she's not really married, living in the domain with her husband. Where is she living? With her, in her family home. Therefore, she is in a sense under both the aegis of her husband because she's an arusa, but she's also really living in her father's household, and therefore she's still also under the domain of her father, okay? And so who then has the power to nullify her vows at that point, okay? Does the Torah address it? Absolutely, okay? Because if we go on, okay, in the pasuk, it says, right? What am I looking at? Okay. No, Mel should be able to give me the pasuk, right? Ve'im beit isha nadara o asra isara mashashma v'shama isha v'echrishla lo hini otav v'kamu kom isara v'im hafer yafer otam isha biyom shomo kol motzei svatem l'ren isara nasha lo yakum isha ferena v'Hashem yislacha kol neder v'chol shvuat isara la'anot nefesh isha yakimenu v'isha yeferenu v'im hecharish yacharish la isha miyom el yom bekim et kol nidareha or kol asera asher ala, right? Goes on. V'mefer tam ochrei shemon v'nasat, right? And that's it. Okay, so what happens? So the middle situation, okay, is the problematic situation. So what happens there? Okay, in that situation, since we're putting forward the idea that she is an arusa, she's partly under the domain, even though she doesn't live with him of the father, because she's living there, but partly because she's already engaged. The arusa, okay, fiance, husband, okay. We have what would appear to be a situation where we need both.
Recording in progress.
Right, working together to do the nullification.
She's in the house of the father. And the father hears it, and the husband isn't there to hear it.
That's exactly what we're going to talk about today. Okay? That's Zev's hearing it. Okay, now if we quickly look at, for a moment, Samech Zion, okay? What I want you to see there is about, it's a short section, but about 2/3 down the Amud there, it says Amar Rava, Amar Kra, Vimhayo Tiel Ish Unidareha Aleha. So from that part of the pasuk, Rava determines a Torah basis for the middle situation, that it is the joint partnership of the, I'm going to call it husband, fiance, okay, and the father, okay, to do the nullification of the vow. Okay, all right. So once we understand it, and then so Rava gives his basis on a pasuk. Then we see that they're on the top of Amud Beis, Samech Zion Amud Beis. There is another attempt to give an alternative explanation on what you base it, things like that. If that's not complete, we now get to Samachet Amud Aleph, which is today's daf, where we get another attempt, another alternative explanation as to who and how we can nullify, revoke, depends on what the term, the vow by this young woman between 12 and 12 and a half, who is an arusa. Okay, so that's where we stand now. Okay, but remember, okay, on the one hand, she's a quote married woman, and therefore, on the other hand, she's still living in the household of her father. Okay. Now what happens? We now understand the following. We can pick up. The Bey Rabbi Yishmael and the Academy of Rabbi Yishmael Tan, they taught the following way of determining this middle section. Okay? Ben ish leishto, ben av lebito. Okay? There they were citing a different pasuk. Okay? In this situation. Okay? And notice in the pasuk, it says man to woman, or his wife, father to daughter. So both are referred to in that pasuk, which would seem to be a very viable means to say, if I'm arguing that it's got to be joint partnership for nullification, right? The pasuk gives both examples. Okay. So what happens? So according to the Academy of Rabbi Yishmael, mikan lena'ara ha'me'urasa shehaviha u'ba'ala mefirin nidareha. That based on this pasuk, that's how they teach the joint requirement of the two of them to nullify her vows. Fine. Okay, we've now come up with a different pasuk that gives us the same conclusion that we saw previously from yesterday, what would have been yesterday's daf, in two attempts. However, says the Gemara, Ulatana debe Rabbi Yishmael, if that's the case, and the Tana of the Academy of Rabbi Yishmael is using this pasuk, what about the pasuk that Rava uses? Okay, what does he do with that pasuk? Right? Ve'im hayu tiyeh le'ish. That was the pasuk that Rava cited, right? So how does he understand that pasuk? Maya vidle, what does he do with it? Mokim le'idech de Rabba. He uses that pasuk for a different explanation that Rava gives that the Gemara hasn't totally shared with us. Art Scroll, however, has a good note on it, okay, where it points out that it's a situation where there's two kiddushin, okay, that one is with a first marriage, one is with a second marriage. I'm not going to go into it in a lot of detail, but therefore the implication is that the second husband, just like the first husband, can nullify vows. Okay, so what happens? Varava. So now we flip the question. Okay, how come if that's what Rava uses to get his, let's say, double requirement, husband and father? Okay, why doesn't he use the pasuk that the Tana from the Academy of Rabbi Yishmael use? Right? Varava. Hi, the Tani de Rabbi Yishmael, Maya Vidle. What does he do with it? Okay, what does he do with that pasuk? Okay, Mibayele. Okay, what does he need it for? Lomar shahabal mefer nidarim shebeino leveina. Okay, that he uses that pasuk to tell us that where the husband can nullify the vows, or where they are vows impacting on the marital relationship, okay, between the husband and the wife, but not on other vows. Okay, so he limits, in a sense, the ability of the husband, okay, based on that pasuk. Okay. Having said this now, we understand where the situation is in this middle ground, right? When she's a na'ara, urasa, and she needs both the father and the husband. What happens then if one, as Steve just asked, and as the Gemara is now going to go into, if one of them is either missing or doesn't hear the vow, or if only one of them acts or doesn't act, things like that. Okay, so Art Scroll again has an extensive explanation with a diagram on this situation.
Not like when we need.
Not exactly, not like when we needed it the other day. Okay, Ibayalahu. So it was asked as follows: Baal, when the husband, okay, megazgies, does he, I'm going to use the word for the moment, sever the vow? In other words, is that what he does? I'm going to explain it in more detail in a second. Oh, mikalesh kalish, or does he weaken the vow? In other words, if you have the vow and you need two people, okay, to totally nullify the vow, if he were to nullify the vow on his own,
But
okay,
this is all theoretical.
exactly.
It can't happen.
Okay, were he to nullify the vow on his own, does that mean that the vow is still partially still in place? We're going to see in a moment in the Gemara. We're going to see in a moment in the
Gemara's
Gemara.
gonna give an example.
Right,
We'll
in
clarify.
just a second. Or does it mean that his, let's say,
That the vow is weakened.
okay,
by
or that
50%.
the entire vow is weakened, and therefore, were she to violate the vow, she would not get the appropriate punishment, okay, of Malchus.
No, the whole vow is still in effect, but
Right.
because it's been diminished, she can't. get
By
it.
half the parties necessary to nullify it.
Now, this is only theoretical because in practice, you need together.
Right. So let's
Or
see what.
nothing is changed.
So,
But this is just
so
a
since we've
drama.
since we've asked the question, the Gemara has to clarify its own question.
What do they mean by
Heicha kama ba'ile. What then are they really asking about? Asks the Gemara. Kigon. So here's going to be our first attempt at explaining the question. Kigon di nadra mitrin zeti. That the young woman took a vow not to eat 2 olive amounts of a certain food.
slices?
Okay, whatever. Vishama arus veheferla, and her husband, okay, heard this vow, he nullified it. Va'achal tanun, but she nevertheless ate. Okay. I amre migaz giyez. If we're saying that when the husband alone were to make the nullification, that he basically cuts the vow. In other words, he does only half, since she ate still 2, okay, and he could only nullify half the vow, she ate 1 whole olive amount of food, which is an amount enough to make her chayav, and therefore she is subject to the punishment of Malchus, and therefore the lakya, she gets Malchus. Oh, okay, or perhaps Iamrin and Maklish Kalish, if we say that his single nullification, in other words, half, only weakens the vow. In that case, maybe she might not get Malchus because she simply committed a prohibition. Isura ba'almahu,
Did something wrong.
right? Mai, what's the situation? What's our result? So now the Gemara wants to tell us with the following Braita, a whole number of scenarios, okay, in which, since Steve's question, in which we've said, if our premise is that they have, the 2 of them must nullify the vow, let's say jointly. I'll use that term for the moment, okay? And then we have to understand, what does it mean jointly, okay? But if the 2 of them have to do it, okay, both are necessary, what happens if that aspect is not done? Okay? It's not done. It's not completed.
Because of external.
Whatever reason, we're going to see in a second. Okay? What?
What has it got Chashuv got to do?
We'll see. Wait. Sid, let's see what the Gemara suggests.
All theoretical.
We'll see. Let's see what the Gemara suggests. Okay? If the Gemara is going to suggest your resolution, great. Maybe the Gemara is.
she's the only one who can go to another
Right.
Chashuv, and she wants to keep her vow.
Right.
It's her father and her
Her
husband,
husband
who's
that is-
affected by it, who wants
Right.
to get rid of it.
So what happens? Tashma, listen to the bright. Ematai, okay, Amru. What is it when they say Amru meit haba'al? Okay, nitrok na reshut la'av. Under what situation might it be that when the husband dies, you're going to use the word for nitrok na, transfer here, but what it really means is empties. It leaves one empty and it puts the load entirely on a single individual. And what happens when the husband is not present to do his part of the nullification? The entire load of doing the nullification falls on the father. Okay?
She's
Under
back
what-
in her father's house with no husband to
Okay.
share the responsibility.
Okay, nitrokna reshut la'av. Under what circumstances could that be? For example, if the husband dies, right? Okay. Bisman, okay, here's an example, says our Mishnah, our Gemara. Bisman, right, it's part of the Brisa. Bisman shalosh shama habal kodem sheyamut. One example might be that the husband did not hear the vow before he died. Erwin.
But he has that control just after Erusin and not before the Suin?
He has only partial control
Right.
during Erusin. The father also has control. So it's the two of them, right? Okay, so if he dies without hearing the vow,
That's what the Gemara said.
that's what it seems to be telling us. Second case, Osha Shama Vishata, or the husband heard the vow, but he was silent. We might call that passive confirmation of the vow.
No, because he has this whole day to
He's got a whole
contemplate.
day, right?
So he heard about it and he's
He's
contemplating.
silent. Oh, could be.
He
I don't know.
doesn't say, he could say. I
He's
cancel.
silent.
He could say.
We don't
I
know.
accept, but he's thinking about it.
Well, but the Art Scroll calls that passive confirmation.
Yeah, but it's not really, because tomorrow passes.
So you're disagreeing with Art Scroll today, okay?
I'm disagreeing with the word.
Okay.
I understand what he's trying to.
Oh, sheshama v'hefer umet bo bayom. Or he heard the vow, he canceled it, his part of the vow, but he died that same day. Okay? Zohi sheshaninu. This is where we teach the following. Okay? Mei tabal nitrokna reshut la'av. The husband has died, and the entire responsibility now rests on the father.
Right, so if you say that quiet is positive affirmation, then it doesn't work, because now you have a conflict between the husband saying it's good and the father saying it's not. That's why I don't like that translation.
Okay, all right,
He just hasn't made his wishes known,
okay,
and he dies.
all right. I'll make a note in my Art Scroll that Michael disagrees with him with that. Okay.
The Ron-
Okay.
What happens if both of them go in?
Oh, we're not done yet. Hold on. Hold on. We got at least
More
2 or 3
cases.
more cases. All right. Aval. Right. Im shama v'kayem. What happens if they heard it and he
accepts it.
affirms it? Oh, sheshama v'shatak umet bayom shela'acharav. Or we say that he heard it. He was silent. He was contemplating it the entire day, and then he died the next day. Because remember, the pasuk said, "Bo bayom."
That's your affirmation.
Okay.
of desire.
Right? In other words, he's silent, and the entire day he considered. Okay, that would be the passive confirmation. Ein yachol lahafer. Okay, the father is
loses his
unable to make any nullification. Okay,
So the vow is enforced.
No, because now the husband had affirmed it and is dead, but
He's
but
dead.
you need put two to tango.
all right, okay, what goes on? Let's go on and flip the example. Shama aviha v'heferla. Say the father heard the vow and he nullified it. V'lo hispik ba'al lishmoa ad shemet ha'av. And the husband did not have enough time to even hear the vow before the father died. Okay, what happens? Zohi sheshaninu. That's when we teach the following. Meit ha'av lo nitrak ma'na reshut labal. In that situation with the departure of the father, there is no transfer,
Right.
total nullification to the husband. Okay, all right, we go on. Another example. Shama ba'ala v'heferla. The husband hears the vow, he nullifies it. V'lo hispik ha'av l'shmoa ad shemet ha'ba'al. But the father doesn't hear the vow before the husband dies. Zohi sheshaninu meit ha'ba'al nitrokna v'shut la'av. That's again a case where we can teach that in that situation, with the death of the husband, the entire responsibility of nullification goes to the father. Okay? Another,
Because the husband had pre-nullified.
right?
So therefore, the father completes.
He's
the
completing, he's doing his, okay, if the husband did his part by nullification, then died, okay, the father then can fulfill his
Right.
second
Or
part.
not, then leave
Okay,
the
and
house.
that's it. Okay, another case. Shama ba'ala v'heferla. The husband heard her vow and nullified it. V'lo hispika av l'shmoa ad shemet. And the father didn't get to hear the vow before he died. Here, what do we say? Ein habal yachol lahafer. The husband is not able to nullify, right? She'ein habal mefer ela b'shutafut. Why? Because the husband can only do the nullification in joint partnership with the father. Okay? Now, what's going to happen is tomorrow the Gemara is going to continue and give us further examples, and we'll go into it in more
To
detail.
understand the underlying concept, why sometimes where it can transfer back to the father, but cannot transfer to the husband, you have to think. The husband is only a partial husband.
Right.
That never changes in any of these cases.
Okay.
But when the husband is no longer in the picture, the father is a full father because the part of responsibility he shares with the husband's dead.
Yeah.
So now he's simply the father.
He's simply the
of a
only
young
one
woman
responsible.
who happens to be a widow, but he get,